Welcome to The Probe, a podcast about the business of creativity. The Probe is an audio and video podcast series for artists, designers, and creatives that want to learn about the business of art and design. In this podcast series, we talk with artists and designers from different creative industries and disciplines in order to view and understand creativity from a business perspective. If you want to support our podcast or check out the video format of this podcast, make sure you check out the links in the description. Welcome to this week's episode of The Probe. I am your host, Esteban Julian. And before we actually start this episode, I want you guys to ask yourselves a question. And that question is, what is our relationship with silence? What is your relationship with silence? How do you define it? Is silence holy? Is it lonely? Is it happy? Is it sad? Is it chaotic? Every artist and every person must find independent meaning to these types of questions. It's these questions what drives us to continuously discover and improve in the hopes of eventually, hopefully, in the future, getting close to a resemblance of greatness, both in our work and our personal life. And by greatness, I don't mean this very ambitious and egotistical concept. Greatness in an artist's world usually just means good enough or something that you're actually satisfied with. So it might not be as philosophical as you'd think. Now, this week's guest is a great example of what that journey of self-discovery as an artist actually looks like, from a grounded and relatable perspective. And not only, how that journey of self-discovery looks like, but how that never-ending journey of self-discovery and progress eventually leads to evolution and both evolution and progress, not only in your work, but also in your professional career. So in this week's episode, I sat down with artist Dean Fox to share a little bit about his story, where everything started and how everything in his life sort of developed in this never-ending pursuit for silence. Now, before we start and you start listening to this episode, I highly recommend you check out Dean's work before listening to this actual episode. I always recommend looking at an artist's work before listening to any type of content to truly appreciate the talent, the lessons, the wins, and the wisdom shared in every single episode. So because of that, the link to Dean's work will be in the description of this episode. Highly recommend you check that out. But without any further ado, let's dive into the episode. Thank you for taking the time, Dean. That's can okay. Tell we are in the studio, so I hope I didn't interrupt like a midnight creative session.
No, I try not to paint at night because I always wake up in the morning disappointed.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, well, actually, now that you said that, let's start off with that topic before we actually do like an introduction or anything. Do you tend to be more of a morning person or a night person?
I used to work digitally a lot, so it didn't matter what time of the day you were kind of working.
Right.
I used to be like till like 4 a.m. job kind of thing. But then obviously, wife and kids and etc. I can't live that lifestyle anymore. And plus, when it comes to painting, you can't paint unless you're in good daylight. Really, light doesn't work. You wake up in the morning, all your colours are off. Great.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, formally now starting the conversation, obviously, thank you for taking the time. I'm really, really excited about having this conversation. I do want to ask you a question that I tend to always ask my guests. And that would be, can you tell us a little bit more about your story, Dean? Like, what's Dean's story? Like, how did you start? Have you always been an artist? Did you start in high school? Did you develop that career when you got old? Like, what's your story?
My story. I've always known art was my thing. Always. It was evident very quickly to my mother, who I got to say, God bless her, she really pushed me and didn't, although they were massively worried at points about me being like the poor artist, the cliche, they still kind of allowed me to follow my heart, which is the biggest blessing you could have from like parental guidance. They allowed me to be who I was and they allowed me to pursue it. And there was major ups and downs and hard times and good times, and I just kept pursuing it and pursuing it. I to be honest with you, I don't know what else I could do. You know, it had to work. It had to work, and I just had so much like passion within that and so much drive that I just refused to fail. And even through the darkest of times, I just pushed through, carried on. And it comes to you when there's great love involved in what you do and dedication. And I think then you start to appreciate the rewards, and everything that happens comes with gratitude rather than maybe like egocentric behavior or anything like that. So I'm in a good place, mate. I'm in a good place.
That's good to hear, because I can imagine what the challenges were like. And you know what? I think everybody's situation is different. People tend to have strengths. People tend to have weaknesses. People are lucky in some areas. People are not so lucky in some others. I'm guessing that, just as you said, the luck that you had having very supportive parents is something that, you know, was a good start to begin with, but the journey in and of itself, it's a tough one, you know? Now that said, was it something that you like ever since you remember was something that you were interested in, or did you have like a period when you were growing up when you were sort of like doubtful what direction you should go towards? Professionally speaking.
My dad wanted me to be a karate instructor because I was always into martial arts heavily. So it was martial arts, music, and art. And art was I was good at all three. You know, it was all three were my strong points. That was all I focused on, was fighting, art, and music. So I wanted to be in a band, I wanted to teach karate, and I wanted to be an artist. So, you know, I still do the bits of the martial arts, I still play, and I'm doing my art. So, you know, 42 years later, oh my God. Yeah.
Wow. So you're able to manage both, like the three things at a time.
I don't earn money from them.
The other ones, but still, you know, I mean, creative, like your energy, your focus goes towards three disciplines, right?
Yeah. Most creative people are generally, you know, it goes through the board. They're normally good at writing music, or, you know, the creative process isn't just being good at painting, or it can, you know, it kind of transcribes into writing, into music, whatever it is creatively. If I turn my hand to sculpting, I kind of find that I'm at home or comfortable with it. So yeah, but painting, drawing was always like the strongest of the three. Yeah, it was definitely the strongest and the most passionate of the three. I had to make money from my art.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I kind of admire that, because it's true. Like when you tend to have a creative personality, you get attracted to a lot of different things. And the fun thing about creativity is that it's a very multidisciplinary, I guess, what's the right word for it? Just a very multidisciplinary action. You know, you can learn from a lot of different things that they can complement each other, and business is not something that works in that similar dynamic. So I completely understand what you mean. Now, when it comes to painting, and by the way, I'm going to put the link to your Instagram in the description on the podcast. I highly recommend every listener to actually check it out before, so that they can actually see your work beforehand. Because I mean, like, you're on the call, you look like a really cool guy, really chill guy, but your work is, I mean, it's top notch, and that's an understatement, you know?
Thank you.
And people should really, I highly recommend people look at your work before they actually listen to the conversation, so they can appreciate, you know, who they're listening from. Now, that said, when it came to painting, I'm guessing it was not always like smooth sailing. You had to build your skills up. Was there like a period where you sucked for a while and then suddenly you became good, or was it something that it was something that you were naturally very good at?
I'm going to sound quite big-headed. It was something that was very evident very, very quickly. But that said, doesn't mean, you know, I started my art career. I had a load of paintings under my arm from art school, and then I ended up doing a project for a friend who was doing an advert, and I did a load of storyboards for him personally. And he said, "Oh my God, these are fantastic stories. There's a company up in town that do storyboards and, visuals and all these kind of things for advertising. I was like, oh my God, I could make money. The first time I heard, oh my God, I could make money from my art and my drawing, which was always fundamental. It was always my draw. I started off oil painting, but then I was just, away with the drawing. Drawing was my strongest aspect of my art. Studied a lot of anatomy, drawing from my mind without reference and stuff like that. But then I went up to this agency and there was all these older boys sitting there around with cobwebs all around, using marker pens and inks and stuff and doing these visuals, and they were producing like 10, 15 color frames a day of these slick, presented advertising boards. And I was like, oh my God, how the hell am I ever going to do this? And no matter how good I thought I was, I still had to relearn in that discipline, which made me professional, fast at what I do, and just make around, more professional, really. But it took me about 1.5 years of development, and I thought I was the bee's knees. I could, I was the artist of the school, and everyone admired my work. And then all of a sudden, I was up in the city with all these older guys, and I was like, "Wow, okay, I'm going to have to relearn how to present your work well very quickly." And it was always about what you had to start to realize what to leave out, which was kind of like one of my mentors said that is, drawing the face is not about what you're putting in, or drawing is not about what you put into it. It's about what you leave out. And then I kind of for me, that kind of reflected so much on just personally on life in general, not just art, but the art of living.
Principles of simplicity and how
your inner self, yourself, really, in a way, is like what to reject rather than what to keep adding to you. Because if you're going to keep adding to you, you're just going to carry on, like you're going to be hunched over with a load of weight on your back, and you're going to be bogged down with details and worry, and then you've got so much to get through, and you want to travel light.
Yeah. That's awesome. And when it came to your skills, you said that it was something that you were always very naturally good at. Do you mean, or was it more from a technical perspective or from a creative awareness perspective, or both?
This is quite an interesting topic, because creativity and technicality are just completely two different things.
100%.
The beauty of good art is when the two come together, and creativity is something that develops with maturity. The way you see the world, the way you see yourself, your internal maturing, not necessarily an outer, maturing, but an internal maturing develops your creativity. Technically, I just always had a mix. I was always, maybe at points I was more creative, I felt, than I was technical. You see some of these photorealist painters, and they're so technical, but sometimes they can lack in creativity.
Yeah.
And sometimes you see really creative people and they don't have technical skills. So yeah, to see when you get that kind of that marry up of the two, then really wonderful things can happen. And I'm not saying I'm there. I wouldn't say, I'm great at both. I think I'm more creative than I am good at technical skills. But yeah, my drawing was always strong. I painted very young. And then when I went into, and I was so naturally took to painting and would always copy masterpieces and artists I liked. But then when I went into the commercial world in my 20s, and it was predominantly inking and drawing, the paints got put, and it went about maybe 15 years of not painting.
Wow.
And I met my partner, and she saw these pictures around my flat at the time that I was living in, and she was like, "Why aren't you doing something with these?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm busy commercially. I was working in computer games and concept art and storyboarding and just covering the commercial board with my art." I was like, I haven't got time for it. But she said, but like, that's what you really want to be doing. You want to have full control over your creativity. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. So, I'm always meeting a brief. I'm working to tight deadlines all the time. It's not creative, because you've got to meet a brief.
It's a constrictive environment.
Yes, but I was getting paid still to kind of draw, so I thought it was the most I could push. Doing something with a pencil and kind of, well, actually it's a Wacom, but now, yeah. So she really was my driving force to say, come on, let's pick you've got to push this. I think she regrets it
now. All those financial risks now is something that, that's not something that a wife would support.
I had my bread and butter behind me. So I was able to work the art without compromising myself, I'm really fortunate in a way, because I'm able to not sell myself out in any way and produce what I want to produce without worrying about it being sellable, commercial enough, or anything like that. That all got right. And I did the art purely, to express myself authentically with it. And like with the Instagram and all the things, the platforms that started to evolve, because I thought, like, how do you get into it? How do you become a successful painter? I mean, I've only kind of like established myself in the commercial world, but that's tangible. Right. There's advertising agencies and you see these galleries and the works in them. You think, how do you get into this? And from that, it was just a major roller coaster of ups and downs, and starting small in hometowns and working with publishers that then didn't work out, and suddenly finding myself in Soho in London in a gallery, and then getting mucked about for years, and then spending 2 years with people holding on to works that weren't developing and failing. And you've got to be prepared to fail. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, the safety blanket of my commercial work, the income coming in, that enabled me to do maybe a week's work and then take 2 weeks off. So I'd earn a stint and work day and night and earn a load of money to then kind of subsidize the fact that I could take maybe a month off and just paint.
Yeah. Okay. I really want to get into that sort of roller coaster experience from a professional perspective. I think that's going to be a very, very interesting topic. That said, I do want to understand a little bit more about when you started working in the commercial sphere, and you said you got stuck in that place for a long time. I'm supposing it was mainly more like a freelancer position, or you were 9 to 5, the whole thing.
I was working freelance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And how were you happy doing it? Did you always have the need to stop doing it? Or was it something that somehow you enjoyed and used it productively once you actually started focusing on a more
I loved it. I just couldn't believe I was earning money from drawing. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
My mind was blown a little bit. My parents were over the moon. They couldn't believe it that I was actually, when I got my first paycheck in and everything, they were like, wow, okay, there's something here. Advertising, is it's a 24-hour job, and don't get me wrong, it's intense. Mm-hmm. And crazy deadlines. But that's what made me so efficient. You had to hand in work like 20 frames within maybe a 2-day period, and hand them in by 6 o'clock the next day. So you just like, right, I've got to get through these, mm-hmm. and they've got to be presentable. It's tiring, but you earn well in that short, little window. And that's what now kind of take it easy with the art and not panic, and do what I want to do with that. So I'm working commercially in that sense, but within the art, I'm going to be who I am, and I'm not going to compromise myself in any way, and I think that's been beneficial for me. And, I'm in a privileged position. I know a lot of artists that, don't have that privilege. They may be great painters, but they haven't got good drawing fundamental skills. They can't translate it to commercial work with the speed and the intensity, and drawing from their head is a completely different ball game than than drawing from reference.
Yeah. I think that was a super smart decision in every single way, because I mean it was beneficial for you to practice on your technical ability, maybe not so much in your creative ability, but definitely the technical part of drawing and painting. It was a good opportunity for you not to be stressed out economically, because I mean the process, as you said, is going to be extremely difficult. The last thing that you want is go through that roller coaster of emotions and experiences, plus be broke, and plus not be able to pay your bills, and plus have 3 kids. You know,
oh, God help me! I've only got 2 kids.
Yeah.
No.
and it's easy to overlook, you know, especially now, because people that are obviously people that want to get into art are usually very young. They have this mindset of either I do this or I don't do anything else. And the reality is that if you get, I mean, you said you got lucky, but in a way you were able to put the dots together on, okay, how can I use these things that I'm passionate about into something that can be helpful for me in the future? You know, listen, just a smart decision.
Yeah. Do you know what it is? It's like what you were just saying is people, they want to do their art because they want to be free in their expression. You know, they want to be totally free in their working life to do what they want to do. And when you've got to pay the bills, you don't, if intention creeps into your art, which is like, what you always got to ask yourself, why do I want to do what I'm doing? Why? What? And be really true to yourself, which is you can't kid yourself. You got to be why do I want to do it? Look at it really carefully. Is it like an egotistical thing? Why do I want everyone to, you know, because I used to paint so tight and try to make it all look so realistic, and because you wanted to show people that you could paint. But that's not creating art. You're thinking of others. Your intentions are so important, because that's the motive and the energy behind the end result. And if your intention isn't authentic and it's got a motive that's based within an egotistical stance, like I want to make money, I want to be famous, I want people to recognize, you know, you're just going to fail. You're just going to fail. You might have it, but it will be dead, and it means nothing. It means nothing. Intention is like the word intention. Sooner or later, if you've got motive behind your work, yeah, you're going to be in a bad place with it. Sooner, you won't be happy with what it is that you're doing along the line. Because we all know you have all the money in the world, and it doesn't make the slightest bit of difference to your happiness or anything. It gives you momentary kind of, you know, like gratification, but long run, if you're not into what you're doing because you've compromised yourself or you've put some intention on it, you're not going to be happy with what you're doing anyway. You know, the grass is always greener scenario, definitely, especially with the art world. You know, you think you have an idea of what it's like, and then you get there and you realize it's for the sharks, and you know, and it's not all roses what you think, you know. You worry, well, like I said, about other people that didn't have that support of income from another kind of thing. They must be worried sick about when their next sales are coming, or, you know,
it affects their quality of their work to a certain extent, you know.
Artist depression is a real thing.
Yeah. No, yeah, and I know exactly where you're coming from. Yeah.
Creative depression, you know, like people in the creative industries, people that are, my wife was a great dancer, and, you know, nothing, you know, wanted to open a dance school, and then ended up just being, well, I should say but ended up being a mother, and that's what she loves and she's good at. And, you know, but they had to compromise things because things didn't work. You know, not everyone can be the footballer, and not everyone, you know, how many people are trying to do certain things, and the buskers on the street, and that are sitting on the street corner, and the artists doing the portraits on the street. So I am grateful, but my God, have I worked at it, you know? So not all just falling into place. I've worked my ass off.
Yeah, no, I imagine. And in hindsight, it's always easier to look at how the process eventually worked out. But it's easy, right? Like, it's easy to look back and talk about how things should be done. For example, creatively, how to develop yourself creatively, how to find that identity. For you, I'm guessing even that process wasn't even that smooth. Or like when you started. Yeah.
Sorry. Developing yourself creatively takes failure. you got to be just to button on what you were just saying, developing yourself creatively. I had to think about it earlier, because you think, it was like maturing. I think maturity comes from the things that you can't control and the failures in life that really shape you. Like, we think we have autonomy, but you don't. It's going a bit deeper, but you don't choose relationships breaking up, illnesses, death. None of these things have choice attached to them. And these are the things that shaped you. Failures in life. You tried, but you failed. And these you've got to be prepared in any creative thing to fail.
Yeah, and also have the right expectations, right? To embrace where you're at. Because, and that's what I mean. Like, for example, me, if I look back to when I first started my career, or who the person that I was 10 years ago, professionally and creatively, like, it wouldn't be realistic for me to have the expectations of how I think now to how I used back then. You know, if I did that, it would have made the whole process more difficult. I would have probably made worse decisions. I would have been miserable through the entire process. You know what I mean? And so I'm guessing your process was something very similar. When it came to your professional development as a painter, what do you think, or what was the first sort of big milestone for you? Like, what made it happen? Was it making something that you were extremely, extremely happy about? Was it something maybe more economical, like having a big sale? Like, what was that first milestone for you?
First, with the fine art. First milestone of success, I think, just, you know, being in a show all of a sudden in central London was like, wow, you know, I'm in the city, and getting the sale of I had 2 pieces in the show, and I think both sold. So it was that moment where I thought, oh, this is just brilliant, because for me, unless other people are experiencing the art, there's nothing more rewarding than other people, talking to people and people appreciating what you're doing, because you put so much into it, which kind of, you're not doing the work for other people.
Yeah,
you're doing it.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
So I probably will contradict myself quite a few times in this conversation, but yeah, having people see it and relate to it is really where you kind of, you know, where I thought, okay, this is my moment, you know, that kind of benchmark is up from here. Yeah, you know, I could only see, you know, and I was wrong, you know, it went up, down, back and forth, and it's only, I would say, I haven't been doing the fine art long, and I'd say that my main eureka moment came at the beginning of lockdown. And my main creative, the height of maybe my internal maturing coinciding, and creativity coinciding with my tech, as we were saying earlier, the technical ability, it all kind of collided about right at the beginning of lockdown, when the virus, you know, everything COVID first hit. I started producing the best work I produced, you know, and which was a weird time, because everyone else was stifled enough. You know, I was like, lockdown. I do that
every day of my life. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm normally locked in my studio. I don't see anyone for 90% of my day. I'm quite isolate anyway, so I'm like, okay, let's just, this gives me time to kind of, well, no, it's no different. I just focus down. Something happened creatively. I don't know. And ever since then, I've been kind of discovering even more of myself. For me, it's really coincides with, I hate the word, but it's like a spiritual nature. And when that deepens and you start to understand the nature of yourself a little bit more, then you open up and become more of a vessel. And I think you channel more depth. And it can allow, if you've got the right space and everything, all the planets are aligned, you know, what comes out is, you know, you feel stronger about it. I would never hang any of my works in the early days. I would, you know, I've decorated my house of recent and well, throughout the past 2 years. And 2 years ago, I was looking at the work. I wouldn't put any of this on my own wall. What am I doing? I don't like any of my own work. I wouldn't hang it. So I started to rethink, what is it? Why? What is it? Why? What do I want to do? What do I want to produce? I want something that I love for the, rather than pleasing other people. I think that's an important thing. Look at what you want to do and why. Yeah, and just be with it.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, 100%. And I mean, it's a very interesting point, because when you said that, there was like a very big milestone for you to be actually in a way rewarded by other people when you're doing it by yourself. Is not necessarily that, but there's just something very special about understanding and being genuine with how in touch you are with yourself and how efficiently you were able to communicate it in order for other people to be connected by that. So yeah, I do understand that, even though it's contradictory, it sort of isn't. So I kind of understand what you mean.
Not doing it for other people in mind, but at the end of the day, you want people to kind of, you want to silence them in front of the work. I think it's too easy to kind of be political in work, or have outer world kind of like motives behind your work. But if you can bring people to a sense of stillness in front of the work, silence, mm-hmm. then I've done my job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's more a philosophical approach more than like a social narrative approach.
Yeah. It's too easy to be political.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, because they're showing you the answers and what you should think, right? Like continuously.
Yeah, art should touch on, for me anyway, it's my own opinion, art should touch on something that is sort of timeless, something that can't be spoken about. So you've got to, you're here for a short time, you may as well leave something and put a beautiful mark on it, mm-hmm. on the world. So you leave something that makes the world, I think it was the sage, guy called Osho said, you haven't lived unless you leave something a little bit more, make the world a little bit more beautiful when you leave. Mm-hmm. So for me, it wasn't about, I started with motives and trying to be deep with stuff, and now it was just what can I create that's beautiful? Not any, people ask what's the work about. It's not about anything. Mm-hmm. Not about anything. It's just about, is it beautiful piece? Is it, that's it.
Okay. And what value or what idea do you use as a guideline for beauty mostly? Is it a feeling? Is it a thought? Is it morality? Is it just complete? Is it nothing?
No, I think it's the silence. I think it's just none of those. Yeah. Mm. I think, I don't want people, people can interpret, they will always interpret, but I think there's that moment when someone sees a piece for the first time, I want their brain to shut off. Mm-hmm. I want them to stop. And if it doesn't have that, and maybe then the mind will creep back in and say, well, what was he thinking? Or I've many a times been asked, what's behind this piece? And there isn't anything behind it. Not everything has to have meaning. Meaning so
enslaving.
Yeah, like, one person's meaning of life is a hell for someone else's, because there's no universal meaning, so I used to be all about meaning with my art. I thought I had to portray a message, but there is no message. Mm-hmm. So you can't please all the people all the time, or whatever. Mm-hmm. kind of thing. So I just wanted to start, I think it was around first lockdown, that I started thinking that, I just want to create something that I find beautiful myself, which is when I started painting landscapes. So I kind of I live in a lot of forest and country land, and I love the English landscape and British landscape, and I am always walking. I've got 2 dogs, and I'm out walking across all the landscape. And I just fell in love with nature. sounding proper old fogey. Something coincided with my understanding and just going on my own on these long walks, would have taken the dogs out, and I fell in love with the landscape. And then I started to create landscape paintings of recent that I've fallen in love with. Of every moment of painting these landscapes, I find that I don't remember any of the process of it. I'm like, I turn around in a few days and think, where's that come from? I don't remember painting it. I enjoy every moment of painting the landscape, which has been a big surprise for me, because I just never saw it coming. Saw it coming. I was always figurative based throughout my work. So yeah, it was a lot's happened since.
And did that because obviously you said that this was something that you came about very recently, up until a couple of years ago, but was the identity that now is more predominant in your work, was it always present through your past, I don't want to say pieces, but through your creative development? Like, was it always something that was an essence into your behavior, into what you were doing, and now it's only solidified?
Say that first bit again.
So does this principle that you're looking for, for your creative designs and for your projects, is it something that has always been present in your artwork and in your work before, or was it something that until now you completely developed, or was it there from the very beginning? Was it something that came about after a lot of work?
I always tried to add my spiritual understandings into my work. And trust me, trying to portray emptiness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't like I how do I put it? Like, spiritual understanding is your true self is a non-duality. Like the world we look at is everything's in duality, like the sun and the moon, dogs and cats, and men and women, everything. And your true the being aspect of the human being, the being aspect, which is always overlooked, is a no thing. It's a non-duality. It's beyond mind. So I always thought, the challenge is, how do I portray that on the canvas? Well, guess what? You can't. I forget what that painter, I forget his name, painted the black squares. Terrible, I can't remember. I always thought, what was that? What's that? And then I started to, when I matured spiritually, I can understand what he's trying to achieve here with this minimalism, So I wanted to incorporate some of that into my work, and then you can portray as I tried with certain works, but you always fall short on that aspect. So now it was about, well, no, you just create something beautiful, and that is spiritual in itself. It doesn't have to have any kind of meaning behind it anymore for me. I've washed out meaning in my work, and it's refreshing in a way. And now I'm just literally painting painting landscapes, so with a contemporary twist to them. Trying how I can adapt and bring something of myself to these landscapes, to Baroque. Most of my work is based around old Baroque themes, because I like taking older works and seeing how I can maybe bring classical things into a contemporary market, and how I create balances of old and new, and create something timeless that way, rather than it being so current, maybe a trend or a fad, rather than that, try to create something that's got an element of new and old.
And from a professional and business perspective, I'm guessing it was very hard to transition to having this creative identity that was dominant in your life, and then having to readapt all of that to succeed creatively, right? To actually make money of your artwork. How was the professional process like for you? Did you start off and you hated it? Did you not hate it so much at the very beginning, and you slowly started making mistakes and progress? Like, professionally speaking, how did you develop, more or less? And let me know if I asked that correctly, because it was a little bit iffy.
What are you asking? How I've developed?
Yeah, professionally speaking, from the perspective of your career, of your business as an artist, at the end of the day,
Oh,
how did that philosophy also apply in your career, or was it purely in your creative process? And then the way you function from a business perspective is completely different.
I'm not. I've got better as a business within business of what I do, but for me, it was just always about making sure I'm loving what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's art in it. What's, like I said earlier, what's my drive? Why? Always asking myself why am I doing this? Checking myself constantly. Am I doing this authentically, or is there some kind of ego based in anything that I'm doing? Is there a motive, like I said earlier? But professionally, do you know what? It might sound, I don't know, a lot of people might not want to hear it because they work really hard on both aspects. I don't market myself massively. I just stuck to creating the best work I could and putting it out there on Instagram. Like I say, Instagram's that double-edged sword of an amazing reach of like, wow. I mean, if it wasn't for the platform, I wouldn't have a business, I don't think, the way I would have a business. But at the same time, it does come with its pros and cons. Like we all know, that Instagram is a very, very superficial world when you delve into it. And comparison as well, comparative mind, which is something that everyone needs to drop. Because if you look at the mind in general, mind is nothing but comparative to other things. You look at other people, you know yourself from other people, what they're doing, how bad I'm doing, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So in terms of the business, I have to make sure I don't get involved in that too much, keep myself out, keep checking on myself and making sure that I'm doing things, like I said, authentically. But yeah, I hate to say it because it's not everyone's case, and I do feel for other people, but everything kind of fell into place because of that attitude. So I was just doing the best work I can. People took it. It just all opened up for me.
Yeah.
It was a quick roller coaster ride, very quick. Not that I've got somewhere, because I'm not, you know, you're never there. You never arrive. You know, there's always more. I don't think I've even touched the surface of that aspect yet.
Right.
So it's a long way to go. Creatively, as you know.
Well, yeah, and you know what, Dina, I think people tend to underestimate the importance of that philosophy that you just said. But at the end of the day, that's always the constant denominator of something that actually works out, is the quality of the creation, the quality. It doesn't matter, and this doesn't only apply to art; it applies to any creative discipline. Like if there's people that are really good at marketing and really good at sales, and that's where their business strength comes from.
Yeah, no, I know.
But in the creative sphere, it's about the quality of the work. If you're really good at what you're doing, and your work can do all of that for you pretty much, and that's what happens to you. But it's
I don't know. I mean, people would argue, you know, people say you've got to be a great marketer. You have to see the most shocking of works that are up there. You know what the art world's like. I don't have to tell you. Yeah. You see, sometimes you think how, why, and it's more about the fact that they've been marketed correctly, name over substance. Massive. I mean, that's just it's like any creative, you know, boy bands get thrown together and they're terrible singers and they're marketed well and they look good and everything's, you know, can't sing a note really, and what does it matter? But you know, they sell God knows how many records. It's the same. So I wouldn't say. I'd say again, it's good to have a little bit of a balance of both, being able to market, business acumen alongside it, but also, you know, at least be true on both sides. Have the goods. Be good at what you do. And just try to flog a dead horse just because you can, because life's a bit more it's not just about that, really. It's the end of the day.
100%. And what would you say has been the most difficult or challenging experience you've had as an artist so far?
The wife. I think it's, I'm probably speaking truth. The relationship aspect, I'm like I don't put it down. I don't stop. Like, I can shoot up at 12 o'clock at night and think, I've got to go down to the studio. I'm lucky I work and I've built, the studio around my home life. So I have that flexibility, but my God, that means I don't even more. I'm kind of, I found it very hard to strike that balance of putting it down, putting it down. I'm with my family now, and to shut off. Because although I'm an artist, I'm not a very patient one. And when something's not finished, if I probably didn't have a family, I'd probably be in that studio eating while I'm painting and going until the painting was finished, and maybe getting a little bit of sleep and back again. So, sorry, let me just turn this off. So, yeah, it was, for me, the biggest struggle was finding that balance of how to pull myself away from it, because I thrive in that space. It's almost meditative. I can have these dialogues, arguments with people in my head as I'm painting, and I think, well, I didn't concentrate on that painting at all, but I was arguing and having a debate or thinking about all these things, but you're watching it. And what art does for me is it allows you to, it's the biggest blessing, and can be a curse at the same time. It enables you to watch your mind. So you like, from spending years of doing meditation, I realized I'm doing it at every moment, and how grateful, and to turn it on its head and say, oh my God, I'm blessed in a way that I get to be on my own and be okay with that. Where some people just cannot be on their own, they can't, they fall apart, or they get so bored. I've never faced boredom. There's always another painting to do. To strike that balance of shutting that off and being present with my family is something that I did struggle with quite intensely.
Throughout the entire process, not only now, that's just like the biggest problem that you've had ever since you started. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Because my partner was always there through my art career.
Right.
So I'm, prior to doing my fine art again. And so she was there, and then at points has gone, my God, this has been the worst mistake, me pushing you into this. But she's not saying that now.
She lost her husband to just painting. She lost her husband to painting.
She's a good girl, because she's strong enough to be able to realize she allows me to be, as there's been tough times like any relationship, but she allows me to have that time that I need to do it. And thank God, because I think if anyone else that restricted me or in any way, I don't think I could be with them, because I have to have that balance. But it was like, it was becoming like 90% art, constant focusing, and I'm going back down there. I'm going to paint for another couple of hours. And it's like, striking that balance was difficult for me.
And from a business perspective, did you have any other big challenges, big problems when you were developing yourself professionally from a business perspective?
Yeah, there's always again, like if you go through moments where sales are not happening as much, or you always second guess why, and thinking, like I said, figurative work was always representational work is a hard sell nowadays in the contemporary art market. It's hard, traditional skill bases are very few and far between. Like, you don't see a lot of it anymore. So I had to kind of really think, how do I pay homage to my background and my draftsmanship, but bring it into a contemporary market that enables me to still make money, which not a motive, but other than the motive to sorry for the contradiction, but to be able to produce work again, to make that sure that I can keep going to produce that next piece that I've got in mind, because it's always the next piece is the best piece that I'm ever going to do, not the one that I'm working on. It's always, it starts that way, but it's, oh my God, the next one, yeah, the next one's going to be fantastic. And yeah, so you've got to strike some kind of balance of understanding a market, what works and what doesn't, without compromising yourself. It's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster of failing, like I said earlier as well. Acknowledge not being too despondent when you do fail. Sure, you just don't ever give up about what you're doing. You just keep pushing and realizing that all of your failures were your successes, really, because you learn from them. Otherwise you become stagnant. And always keep evolving. You see, the main trouble I find with the business is that the art world wants you to be, people want to see an identity. They want to say, that's a this person, that's a that they can just quickly lock on and see. But in reality, you're always changing. Yeah, you're not the same person you were at 5, at 15, at however, I don't even know how old you are, but I'm not even going to make a guess. How old?
27.
Oh, you're young.
Yeah.
Right. You're not the same person. I was going to say I'm 30, so you're not even there yet. You're always changing. But yeah, your art's supposed to, in a commercial world, you see people repeating themselves constantly. But one day you are feeling one way, and the next day you're feeling this way, and your views on life when you're 27 are not your views that you had when you were 16, and you're constantly evolving. So for me, my work has always evolved. It's always like shape shifted a little bit and, transformed as I've matured. It's never stayed stagnant. Maybe it's because I come from an illustrative background that I can adapt,
invent yourself.
Yeah. But my God, that's the beauty. Who produces albums and produces the same songs over and over again? You'll be bored by the third album. And I do see that in the art world where I feel, it's the same, it's the same thing again and again and again and again. And I just don't understand that. But at the same time, the art industry calls for identity. Okay. I don't see identity. Trouble is, I don't identify with my own self half the time. My own mind I ignore, and as part of my practice is to just witness myself, not participate with all of the chatter. And so yeah, I do struggle, or have struggled with that aspect of myself, is how the business calls for that identity and something to lock onto. And I have always been a little bit of a chameleon that shapeshifts how I feel and where I'm at.
Okay. And so, and you're going to hate this question, by the way, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What do you think, trying to put yourself in the perspective of others, what do you think has attracted others to your work?
What do I think has attracted others? I don't know. I can't answer that. I can't put myself into someone else's. It's so subjective. I don't think it. I think a lot of people won't like it. I don't know. The people that do, maybe it resonates with them in some way. Maybe where I'm at, who knows? I can't answer. What attracts? It's so subjective. Everyone's got different opinions.
Yeah.
And feel the art world of, there's no one thing is with art is there no way is the way. So whatever goes, you know, and that's a beautiful thing. That is a good thing. So no, I'm just grateful that some people do appreciate what I do. I don't what
I love it.
My work in particular, what made them buy my work. I'm always so grateful of that. I love the idea that the art goes on its own little journey, because I always would never let go of, when I first started, I couldn't let go of anything. That was another major problem. I would always hold on. That's why my partner was like, what are you doing with all this stuff? He was in this little flat, like full of all these paintings that I just would hold on to. I wouldn't do anything with them. So it's about letting go. And that is another or for life. Everything, you have to let go of everything as you go along. Don't try to cling to anything. No attachments. So I had to practice another thing, is letting go of my little babies, in that sense, you know, which you have to do with the real babies at some point as well. And it's all about letting go. So going back to what you asked, I really don't know. I don't know if I can answer that question. I don't know what.
No, I mean, and that's that. To be honest with you, that's the answer that I was expecting. The reason why I asked this question is because, it's because it's true. You know, it really is. But I wanted to ask that question because it really puts things into perspective on how the whole dynamic between being a good artist and being successful as an artist it's a very complicated relationship. Because at one end, it's understanding yourself and not really putting yourself into other people's perception of what you're doing. But from the other end, there's a lot of people that lose that battle because they think about what's marketable, what's attracted to other people so much that they lose touch with who they are as artists. You know,
that's not art.
Yeah,
you see a lot of work out there that isn't, for me, isn't actually art. And it is based on, like what we said, it is all based on that motive. It's all about the motive behind, or the intention work. Is whether or not it was artistically based or not.
Have you ever encountered an artist, and maybe not personally, but online or whatever, that has a really good relationship between how they understand and have a grasp of what other people want from a rational and commercial perspective, but at the same time have a really, really strong and respectful sense of creative identity?
Using names?
Sure. Sure. I mean, it's a good thing. I don't think they're going to complain. It'll be a good thing, I hope.
Oh God, I mean, there's aspects of. Go back to your question. What was the question? Because I've been thinking about.
Sure. So, have you ever come across an artist? It can be in any discipline. Doesn't have to be painting. Now that we're having this conversation about being genuine with yourself and putting too much attention of others' perception of your work, you know, the marketing versus authenticity argument, sort of. Have you ever encountered an artist that has has pretty much mastered or come really close to mastering both the relationship between those two things, being marketable and easy to digest for others, but at the same time very strong and authentic in their creative identity?
Yeah, there's loads. I would say someone. There's an artist called Ryan Hewitt. I don't know if you know Ryan Hewitt
right now.
Right. For me, he adapted himself. He kind of evolved, very similar to me. Like he didn't stay stagnant. His artwork evolved over the time. So what he was doing maybe 5 years ago is not the same. You wouldn't recognize it. There's been a transition. And for me, I find that quite credible and quite brave in the art world. So, and he's very, in demand, or, very got that what you're talking about. So, and I admire that in that sense, that he was bold enough to not stick in some mode that was working, but to keep pushing himself into unknown territories, which I like as an artist. Like, I go back to the analogy of musicians. If they just kept on producing the same album each time, by the third one, you're bored senseless. So they've got to, great artists kind of adapt and evolve. So yeah, I admire him in that sense of the bravery and being able to evolve the work. But yeah, there's loads that have got it right, and there's loads that I think, just I won't say any. I won't say any more.
No, I feel you. We won't get any deeper into that.
I don't want to get any beef with anyone.
Yeah, of course. No, I get it. But I think everybody relates to what you're saying. Yeah.
Damien Hirst.
Oh, wow. Awesome, Dean. Well, to be honest with you, I mean, and I could have these conversations forever. So that's why I pretty much usually stick to the 60-minute mark, because I mean, something like this can go on for hours and hours for me. So to wrap the episode up, I'm going to ask you a question that I always enjoy asking every single one of my guests. And you can take as long as you want to answer this question. If you could go back to any particular moment in time, it could be when you were starting, when you were a child, when you were barely developing yourself professionally. What would be the best
history
in your personal history, in your life? Yeah. What would be the best piece of advice that you'd give yourself, and why?
Okay. Just remember to trust life. You're always where you're supposed to be, so never look at anyone else and with any kind of like jealousy or greed, or you're always, everything was perfect. Mm-hmm. You know, even the failures and all of the hard times and everything, it all led to where I am now. And that goes for the, you know, is to trust life. Mm-hmm. So every time I did have doubts or hard times, it's just that keep going back to that, you know, just trust what I'm doing and just trust life, you know. So it puts you where you need to be, not where you think you want to be, from an egocentrical point of view. You know, try to wipe that out. Try to take that out of the equation. That's why I go back to the beginning of this talk, is to, you know, say being authentic to yourself. Trust, to remind myself to just keep trusting and just enjoy it. Stop being such a misery when things aren't working right, you know. Because it's just, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, there's no bloody point in it, you know. You're here for like, you know, a short time. Life is not about working to live or being pissed off you haven't achieved enough. Mm-hmm. You know, the sun's shining now and you've got a peaceful, silent mind. You're going to be in a happy place. You're going to feel good. You're going to be happy. And it doesn't matter whether there's money there or success there. It just none of it matters, as long as if you are pushing for that freedom of expression, so that you're not just settling from the mundane and just keep pushing. Like I'll probably just give myself a pat on the back coming from this perspective backwards, and say, like, you know, you're stuck to your guns, and that's another thing. Just keep sticking to your guns. You know.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Dean. I mean, that was an incredible conversation. And again, maybe I'll think about doing a longer format in the future, just because I find these conversations fascinating. I come from a more, I'm an artist by nature, but I've been a business person by nurture. You know, so. Okay. it's very interesting for me to take both perspectives, both the one that I developed professionally in my career that I wasn't supposed to from for so long to
What type of career are you doing?
I'm sorry?
You said you're an artist.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I think and the way that I approach things and the way that I make decisions and the things that I like and the things that I don't like. But my experience and my skills have mostly been business related. Because again, my path was also a little bit, not a little bit, you know how it goes. It's just
A little bit left brain and right brain.
yeah, exactly.
I'm just completely right.
Yeah. It's just been a mess as it is with probably everybody. But I appreciate the conversation. I really do. I do want to not suggest. I mean, it's almost. I mean, check Dane's workout again. Link's going to be in the description. I encourage everybody to look at your work. I know you hate this, but you deserve the praise, right, Dane? And thank you for having this conversation. It really means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to the audience as well.
That's all right. No problem.
If you enjoyed this episode and you want to directly support our podcast, make sure you check out the links in the description.